You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of Kizuki as the following. Kizuki. 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with Kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, Domino Kizuki number 3, Sit Beside Your Pain. This episode is about the difference between understanding your pain and actually allowing yourself to feel it. I'm just going to open with the major Kizuki. I realized recently that I had spent years understanding my pain and even got sophisticated about talking about it without fully allowing myself to feel it. And I'm guessing I'm not the only one. I mean, how many high-functioning, insightful, spiritually aware people are subtly abandoning themselves by trying to transcend, explain, optimize, or heal their pain before learning to fully be with it? This is a really subtle and tricky distinction because many of us wouldn't consider ourselves to be emotionally avoidant. It's not like we're refusing to look inward, but looking at our pain, noticing it, and even coming to understand it isn't the same as feeling it. So in the last couple of episodes, I shared about my realizations around the carrier and the endurer identity. And these were survival strategies that I had developed very early in life to help me get through my pain. And let's note that this wasn't just about the pain of difficult things happening in life. There's a deeper pain, a silently suffered pain to not having been seen, met, or held by someone when going through those experiences. Like being a child with these overwhelming experiences happening to you and not having any adult eyes fully see what was happening inside me to help me make sense of everything that was going on. That, perhaps, is one of the most important things to let anyone know that they're not alone. And when that doesn't happen, what does a child do? They adapt. They figure something out. They create a strategy. And often that strategy is brilliant to help us get by. But the problem is that the survival strategies rarely disappear even after the imminent danger or risk is gone. Instead, they become part of us, like our personalities. And for me, it was as though I quietly believed that if I could understand these events, that I could somehow make sense of them, I could handle it. If I could explain it, I could live through it. If I could find some meaning in it, maybe it would hurt less. And in many ways, I got really, really good at that. I think perhaps I'm not the only one. You've probably done some version of this too. Maybe you've journaled, you've cried, you've talked about your childhood and analyzed your patterns. Maybe you've come to understand your parents to some degree. And likely, Like me, you've probably consciously left victimhood behind because you saw that it wasn't serving you anymore. I've done all of those things too. But then I realized that understanding my pain and being able to cognize it wasn't the same as just simply feeling it. Because the story lives in the mind, right? But the pain, like the remnants of the pain, they remain alive in the nervous system, in the body. And I do want to offer myself and any of you listeners out there who relate an extra dose of grace here. Because when we were younger, we couldn't allow ourselves to feel the pain. It just wasn't an option. Because to feel it in those younger years would have meant some form of systemic overwhelm. It felt like it would have destroyed us. Our nervous systems were still underdeveloped and maybe not ready to be able to sit with and hold the pain all on our own. And that's why we come up with all of these other strategies or mechanisms. Or maybe it's not even like we come up with them. It's almost like the body's natural wisdom that helps us to get by that way. But in this realization, I found myself looking back and beginning to wonder about all the times that I had reached toward healing before I had fully allowed myself to grieve or wail or be very, very angry. How many times had I reached for understanding before I entered the pain and sat with it and simply stayed present enough with it to be able to say something like, no, this really, really hurts. And spend enough time there for the emotions to be felt. Because I now know that that's when the energy of emotions can truly move, is when they are fully felt in presence. But in my younger years, and all the way up until now, more or less, I learned instead how to function, how to keep going in the world without falling apart. Because I didn't have the presence to meet the depth of those emotions, I used some form of self-pressure to keep myself going. I might even say I learned to use inner force. I disciplined myself. And some of that was good, right? There was a lot that I learned from it. But there was a flip side to it, the price to pay. And I think it might be somewhat of the tragedy of competent children, because when children can perform and be socially adjusted and get by that way, the adults around them often mistake that performance for okayness. It's like the child who struggles gets attention because they require attention, but the child who looks like they're succeeding gets overlooked. And I became very good at looking fine. It doesn't mean that I didn't have all of these issues cooking inside me, but on the outside, I had the performance, like I had the grades, I had the accomplishments, and I got shit done. And one of the biggest realizations in relation to this that initially really hurt was this. It's that my achievement and accomplishments, they were the reason, precisely the reason why I became so invisible to my parents and why I felt so alone and unrecognized in my pain. Because to everyone else, it was like, oh, Mae's fine. She's reliable. Nobody worried about me or even noticed me maybe because I always delivered anyway. And so what did I do? I learned to keep delivering. On top of that, as I spoke about in the carrier episode, it was like, okay, if nobody emotionally sees me deeply, then I would become the one who saw everyone else. And somewhere along the way, understanding others became easier for me than feeling my own pain. Dare I say, maybe in some ways it was the primary way that I used to avoid my own pain, feeling my own pain, is that I would instead extend my heart space to others. Which brings me to my rage. Yes, rage. Because I realized that for me, my rage was more repressed than my sorrow. I've typically had more familiarity sitting with and expressing my sorrow than anger. I never considered myself an angry person. Oh, I might even admit that for many years, I didn't think I had much anger in me at all. But that just simply wasn't true. I've recently been realizing that it's not because I didn't have anger in me. It was more because I had gotten so good at skipping over my anger. Not consciously or intentionally, just that I had simply become so skilled at understanding that I moved straight past the rage into compassion, or I reached for it anyway. But underneath, there was raging anger. Years of frustration about my father's alcoholism and the chaos in my home. Disappointment about emotional absence, loneliness and not being met, anger about being unseen, about carrying things I was never meant to carry alone. Why did my life have to be this way? And along those lines, perhaps most significantly and honestly, a deep, fiery rage at life itself. Because if I'm being really real with you, some part of me genuinely felt like life had just given me too much. I was not dealt life's cards fairly. And that's not a thought that I would normally allow myself to say out loud. At least, not until now. But there's the truth. And coming to terms with this level of honesty helped me to see how, although all of these years of healing and learning have served me in a million ways, at the same time, in other ways, even the healing and quote-unquote wisdom to some degree, I had reached for them and, in a sense, used them as reasons to not feel my rage. Almost like I was transcending it or trying to transcend it without fully allowing myself to meet my emotions there. So what if healing begins, true healing begins, by simply sitting beside your pain and all the emotions that come up with it? This isn't about collapsing into victimhood or spiraling into some poor me story, but it's also not about reaching for gratitude or forcing some positive spin on your life story. As simple as just sitting there and being with the pain, cooking in it, and holding the hurt, all in presence. So I've been revisiting my rage and anger, taking some time to tap into it. I put down my pen and journal, and I even would skip the meditation sittings to instead go on a walk because, oh yeah, for sure, I needed to find some alone time, like away from my kids, to let the kid in me cry and complain and express all of this anger. I'd go on these long walks outside my house with a pack of pocket tissues just in case. and go down these little streets where no one would notice me and just take some time to tap into my rage and allow myself to feel the hate for life and for God and whatever and all of these things and just let it the fuck out. Yes, I did. Not just once, but I made a daily practice out of it for a while until I could actually feel the emotions move and turn its own page. I can't tell you how profound and meaningful that felt for me to accept my rage. Yes. I felt like little Mae in all her rage and frustration for the first time, or at least for the first time in a long, long time, wasn't alone inside her pain. That no part of little Mae was being skipped over. Not even this messy, ugly, fiery, scary part. Finally, I stayed. I stopped arguing with what is. I stopped trying to move past it. I stopped trying to become better than it. I stopped trying to be better than I am. And finally, as I simply sat beside it, there was this landing in what I am. Not who I want to be or who I wish I am, or not more than or not less than, but just all that I am, all the emotions and all. And here's my discovery. Ironically, I learned that is how the civil war inside us ends. Not through solving your emotions and whatever problems, but through dissolving. Because this is how the internal battle finally stops, when you can have the capacity to allow yourself to feel. And then there was a bonus plus. It was a strange thing. The more I allowed myself to feel, the more I felt comfortable with myself. Like, weirdly, I could like myself more. And I guess I didn't expect that, because this might be true for you too. I think the fear prior to feeling whatever emotions that you're avoiding, whether it's like rage and anger for me, or deep grief and worthlessness, like you're nothing. The thought prior to feeling those emotions completely is that feeling them would make me weaker, heavier, less functional. But the truth in feeling them was that instead I felt softer, more human, more compassionate toward myself, and hence I could get up and move and function again. And I want to share this with you because there was a phrase that just came to me over and over again as I was walking and raging and crying and wailing and just letting it all out. Very, very gently, but not from far, from somewhere very near, the phrase came to me. This is the perfect time to love myself. This is the perfect time to accept myself. Not when I'm healed, not when I've figured it all out, not when I've graduated the emotions and they've disappeared, but now, in all of it. And my God, does that feel so good? It feels like coming home. Maybe for some of us, we're trying to heal too quickly. Maybe before we affirm optimize, transcend, reframe, or move on. We simply need to learn to sit beside ourselves, all aspects of ourselves, because our pain deserves company too. Thank you so much for listening. And before I go, I'm super excited to announce that I have a very special event coming up in Tokyo at the luxuriously posh, newly opened One Hotel Tokyo. On Sunday, June 14th at 11 a.m., I'll be hosting a bilingual Kizuki journaling experience delivered in both English and Japanese. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at Mae Yoshikawa to be among the first to know. I would be absolutely thrilled to see you there. Until next time.